Now, Mariel, we've got you here, and we've got a lot to talk about. This Avangrid PNM merger, it's driving me crazy because every time I turn on the television, I see ads that make it sound like it's a done deal. Every time I open up newspapers, I see ads that make it sound like a done deal. What's going on?
It's not a done deal.
Thank you.
It is not a done deal. I am the executive director of New Energy Economy, and we have been objecting and opposing this $8 billion merger between Avangrid and Iberdola. Iberdola is the parent company from Spain of Avangrid. Iberdola owns 81% of Avangrid's stock.
Aren't they caught up in some legal?
They are caught up.
Yes.
Right now, there's an investigation in Spain for bribery and fraud.
Wow.
And falsification of documents. And the CEO of Iberdola and 3 other executive committee, 2 current executive committee members and 1 former executive committee member are being investigated. And so that's happening. That just happened in June of this year. And one of the issues is, why are they coming here? Why are they coming here? Why is this multinational billion-dollar company coming here? And we asked them about that at the hearing. There's a hearing that happened in front of the New Mexico Public Regulation Commission, and I was involved in that hearing. And what was one of the things that was stunning was the CEO of Avangrid, his name, wait a second, I'll tell you in 1 second, what is, Mr. Kump, was being cross-examined. And he was asked, well, why do you want to come here? And he says, this is literally what he said. He said, we see PNM as a beachhead. That's a quote.
A beachhead.
A beachhead. And I actually looked it up. And if you want to, you can look it up too. What is the definition of a beachhead? It's a military term, right? It's when you land before you attack the enemy. So they said, we see PNM as a beachhead, and we hope to consolidate the energy resources in New Mexico, all the solar and wind, so that we can sell it. And we can use PNM, the monopoly, the electric monopoly, as a way to consolidate all energy resources so that we can sell it all over the Southwest, but also to Mexico and to California and to Arizona, and everywhere is literally where they said. They said they were like gaga in their eyes with the financial opportunities for growth, is what they said. And so my concern is about their track record. What is their track record? Their track record, they're in Maine. They own another company that's quite similar to PNM, almost about the same number of ratepayers there. And it's called Central Maine Power. And Central Maine Power has now the highest residential rates in the entire country for a utility that size, has the most brownouts and blackouts. Well, what is a utility supposed to do? It's supposed to provide electricity and also charge you for that electricity through your bills. So if you look at Avangrid's track record, and just in the last 5 years alone, in Maine, in Connecticut, and New York, they've amassed $60 million worth of penalties and violations. And I have to just tell you that PNM doesn't have that many penalties and violations.
That's right.
So why I thought I was, like so many other people, you know, they have that green logo and you're like, ooh, yeah. I want some more green energy because PNM certainly has done a slow walk to green energy.
That's the truth.
They're at about 10 or 12% clean energy. Still mostly in coal, then nuclear. That's their next biggest chunk. Then gas, then wind, then solar. They have less than 4% solar in the land of the Sun Zia on our flag. PNM has less than 4% solar. It's essentially criminal. And So when we asked Avangrid, well, why else are you coming here besides the whole they want to grow, and that's why they're paying so much for the PNM. It's called a control premium to own it, which is that they can control it. They said, well, we want to, take all these renewables and sell them to other places and create to take advantage of lucrative markets, they say.
Wow.
So when we saw what they were doing in Maine, it's very similar there, they had a deal with Hydroelectric Quebec and wanted to move this hydroelectric power to the load center in Massachusetts and go through, literally bulldoze, a pristine forest in Maine.
Good grief.
And that is what I am afraid of for New Mexico.
Yeah.
That really what their plan is to not really focus on PNM ratepayers, just like they haven't focused on central Maine ratepayers, but to use it as a jumping off point, like they said, a beachhead, to sell to other markets. Well, that's not going to help New Mexico.
Not at all.
They're going to extract the wealth of our resources, of our natural resources for their private gain.
And sell it to somebody else.
And sell it to somebody else.
Sell it to somebody else.
And literally take the money and move it not only to Wall Street, but to Spain.
Oh, yeah. It sounds like unrenewable energy at all cost, and especially at a higher cost ultimately to us, the consumers. I'm so glad that I'm a solar customer. I don't know what to do, but even solar might be on the hit list for this company. They'd find some way to worm their way in, and ultimately end up taxing us solar customers as well, I'm sure.
Well, it's interesting because that's another thing. They're right now being investigated in Maine for undermining community solar and rooftop solar development. Right now, there's a pending investigation in the equivalent of the Public Regulatory Commission there. So that's another concern that we have. And them trying to essentially cut off all competition at its knees, and so that they can consolidate power literally and figuratively and monetarily.
So do they own some of the energy producing, the old energy producing resources like natural gas and coal mines and oil fields?
Well, they pretend to be green. And they have great PR, as you know, you all have seen it. You've seen it, you've heard it on the radio and seen it on TV commercials. The truth is that they are largely a natural gas company. And then they have a bunch of hydro and damming. They've dammed a lot all over the world. And then they have nuclear. They also have wind, but less than 2% solar in their portfolio. So here we were thinking, okay, we want a new company with experience to transition us, right? Which is what PNM has been on the slow walk to, from fossil fuels to renewables and to storage. And frankly, Avangrid doesn't have a whole lot of experience with that. They also said at the hearing, well, in response to questions by Commissioner Cynthia Hall, who most of you in Albuquerque, that's your commissioner at the PRC, she asked them, well, do you have a lot of experience, allowing solar to be on the grid? And they said, well, his answer was, we're learning on the fly. And so,
after all these years that they've been on the East Coast, up in New England, they're still learning on the fly.
Because they don't, so that's the problem. That's one of the problems, is they're not the renewable energy industry that they
claim they are.
That they claim they are, that we need. And that I'll just move into what I'd prefer, which is to reject this merger for a whole bunch of reasons, including the fact of their poor track record and their ill experience with solar, but also because we have an opportunity here. And that opportunity could be New Mexicans. So what if we had a public power entity and the people of the state of New Mexico owned the grid, and then we could have municipalities and tribes produce their own energy or purchase or a combination of it. And so then the profits go back, repurposed back into other community needs. You were talking about homelessness, healthcare, education, all the things that we care so deeply about.
Any models for that?
There are models for that. There's mostly municipalization, but there's also what's called community choice aggregation, which is the aggregation of different communities, which has been extraordinarily popular in 11 states now, because people are finding that they want to move towards renewables quicker than the utility model, because the utility model is all about profit.
That's right.
And it's about literally extracting the wealth from New Mexico and exporting it. It's not only extracting the coal from the ground or the gas from the ground or the uranium from the ground, but it's extracting the wealth from the people. Every month, we get that electric bill and it goes up and up and up. When you have solar, as you do and I do as well, you get a hedge against rising utility rates. And so if we could, my dream is that we could have an economic engine here in New Mexico and keep the money here, be the first state in the country to be 100% renewables. I believe that we could get there 5 or 10 years completely. And then if we wanted to sell our renewables, it could be the economic engine for the state that we need.
Yeah, and the topography of New Mexico just makes us an ideal place for renewable energy. When I first got here and I was working for Red Cross, I used to drive through the southeast and southwest parts of the state on a regular basis, and the open land that could lend itself to solar, wind, it's just amazing, and yet I couldn't find any. So that was sort of disappointing to me that would happen. But yeah, this is a perfect place to really go 100% renewable energy. So now I don't get into a lot of rumors, but I heard a few months ago that there was a dust up because of some of the legal shenanigans going on here in the state with, who was it, the Attorney General and the attorney that was representing this whole merger. Anything happening there?
Yes, so, I was alarmed that Attorney General Hector Balderas signed off on the merger agreement, the stipulation it's called. It's a settlement agreement, essentially, and for so little. And especially when he had two really great experts. So there's the Attorney General, but really there's an Assistant Attorney General who handles the case. And the Assistant Attorney General had filed testimony by two experts who were completely against the merger and said it was not in the public interest, which is the legal standard, and said, what Avangrid and Iberdola were offering were inadequate, and also that there were not adequate consumer protections that were part of the merger, especially given some of the shenanigans that they have pulled internationally and also in the United States, their history. So I was really excited by this testimony. And then 20 days later, 18 days later, Hector Balderas settled. So I was like, why? There seems to be a chasm between what his experts filed in testimony, which was super powerful, and then what he settled for.
Shady.
So I was looking into it, and I found out that Iberdola and Avangrid hired Marcus Royale for $400 an hour, up to $350,000, and in July, actually, had used up the $250,000 of it and raised the contract price to $350,000. And I'm thinking, where did that money go?
Yeah.
Where did that
Where'd it
money
come
go
from?
And where did, and the thing is that I asked in Discovery, it's called, questions about, well, how much did you work for this, Mr. Royale? How many times did you meet with the Attorney General? And it was like 17 times. So let's say, and that was during during COVID, so that they were only meeting on the phone or on video. So let's say they met 2 or 3 hours, that would be 60 hours.
60 hours. Right.
And 60 times, 6 times
400.
more,
Yeah.
doesn't even come close to 250,000.
That's right.
So what did that money actually pay for is a question I had. And so then I asked the Attorney General for some other information through IPRA, which is the Inspection of Public Records Act.
Right.
And I said, how many cases has the Attorney General given Marcus Royale, his friend and former law partner, compared to how many other cases he's given to other attorneys? Now, every Attorney General across the United States is allowed to give certain cases to private counsel. Why? Because the idea is, okay, you have a certain specialty in PCBs and water, and that's your legal specialty. Well, it's better for the state of New Mexico to give it to you,
right.
even though we're going to pay you an hourly rate, as opposed to another lawyer who might be a really good lawyer in the Attorney General's office, but has no idea, has no experience in PCBs and water and that kind of litigation. So the idea is that you have the expertise and you'll know how to get to the answers quicker, and the opponents will see that you're the expert in the field. So they do that all the time. That's not the unkosher part. And in fact, Hector Balderas has done that in certain circumstances, given cases to certain lawyers with specialties. But when you compare that to how many cases Hector Balderas has given to Marcus Royale, at least 3 or 4 times the number of any other attorney. And these are the most lucrative cases.
Shady.
So we filed something with the disciplinary board. We asked the auditor, Brian Colon, his friend, both of their friends, so it's like a little triangle there, to investigate. We haven't heard anything back from the auditor. And then we also filed an ethics commission complaint, and that is currently under investigation.
Wow, that's some shady dealings. We've got about 2 minutes left, and there are a couple of things that I just can't let you get away from here without sharing with us. One, Shiprock.
What's happening in Farmington?
What's happening up there?
And the Four Corners coal plant.
Right.
I actually just filed a brief in that case as well. So PNM had reinvested in Four Corners in 2013 based on no legitimate financial analysis. So they invested $1 billion in that coal plant, which has been has a history of all sorts of violations, especially around, it's on the Navajo Nation, of contamination and other kinds of, to the water and to the land. And so in 2013, PNM reinvested nearly $1 billion in the Four Corners plant, and did so based on a flawed, this is not only my words, but that's what the Public Regulation Commission found, a flawed financial analysis from 19 months beforehand.
Good grief.
And so could you imagine, you're going to go buy a house? That's for us, a big financial commitment, right? So what do you say to your realtor? You say, show me the comps. Like there's a slang word for that. What does that mean? Show me the comparables. And what is important is that when a utility invests for us, if they invest prudently, that's the legal standard, like responsibly, then we have to pay in increased rates. But when they invest imprudently, we're supposed to be held harmless. And I won a case in front of the Supreme Court that made that law. And Four Corners, PNM was found to have invested imprudently. But they said, hey, we got the Energy Transition Act passed in 2019, and that supersedes any question of imprudence that we had. And so we are arguing, no, we don't owe you any money. You should never have invested in coal at that time. Everybody was getting out of coal, but why did you double down? And now you want us to pay $300 million, which is what's up in front of the PRC, for the imprudent actions of utility management.
Wow.
So I'm hoping that we'll win.
Great. What can I tell you? Mariel Nanasi, Executive Director of New Energy Economy. We could go on this.
Lots to talk about.
Thank you so much, and we're just going to have you come back. That's all there is to it.
Thank you. There's other cases that are up around nuclear. I know that you were talking, about that. PNM's nuclear investments also were imprudent. Anyway, there's lots to talk about. So I hope that we can win against the merger, and then hopefully people will follow the effort to create public power in New Mexico.
And we'll be looking for some good news.
Yeah,
All
hopefully.
right? Good news.